Welcome to Putting Social Media to Work for You, sponsored by the ABA Career Center and free to its members. Moderating the program today is Kathy Morris. Kathy is founder of Under Advisement Limited and former Director of Career Counseling and Placement for Northwestern University School of Law, former Director of the ABA Career Resource Center and the Center for Continuing Legal Education. She has decades of experience with guiding law students, lawyers, and law firms, focusing on attorney training and professional development. Kathy, you may proceed with the program. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you, Carrie. Welcome, everyone. This is our second program in the second year of our ABA Career Advice series, and so glad to have you all with us as we kind of wade into the waters of how lawyers can and should use social media. Today with us we have two really notable experts in this field. We've got, and they're both, by the way, former practicing lawyers. Kevin O'Keefe is with us today from Seattle, and that is where his LexBlog company is based. He's a successful entrepreneur, something a lot of lawyers and lapsed lawyers, could only aspire to. He's created so much of what is now law.com, and he helps lawyers network online by blog and social media. You may have seen the name of his blog in his bio, and I love it. It's called Real Lawyers Have Blogs. We have a little piece from it among our materials that are posted today, so we'd like you to take a look at that. And he strongly believes, and you're going to hear that in his remarks today, that online visibility in a number of possible forms is really a necessity for lawyers today. And Nicole Black comes to us from across the country in Rochester, New York. She is not only an avid and active legal technology enthusiast, she devotes her career to writing about and analyzing emerging technologies and their effect on the legal field. Nicole blogs in a number of places mentioned in her bio, and also on Above the Law. And she's the Director of Business and Community Relations for MyCase, which is a cloud-based law practice management software. She was the author of the ABA book, Social Media for Lawyers, The Next Frontier, and as moderator, and if you've taken these courses before, you've seen and heard from me, a longtime career counselor for lawyers who, by the way, is somewhat involved in social media, but I'm going to learn a lot along with you all today. So as moderator of the Career Advice Series and this, of course, this program, hearty welcome to both Nicole and Kevin and to all of our significant audience members. We use the same program agenda as always. We go through some of the top issues and we go to tips. We take your questions throughout the program. We have a short moment we call Agree Disagree, where I'll toss out a statement and our faculty will either agree, disagree, and say why. And we continue with, as we hope, lots of your questions and finish up with some takeaways, some things that you can think about after the program, as well as some ABA resources. So with that, we go to the slide, which will be up for a bit, on the top issues. And, this may sound basic, but Nicole and Kevin, let's start with you, Nicole. Could we define and maybe even differentiate some of these terms? I think blogging, was the first born of the things we'll talk about today in about 2002. But can we make sure we're on the same page with our listeners about what a blog actually is, and actually, is it considered social media, or is it sort of, in its own separate special category? Nicole?
Well, a blog is a non-static website. Typically, websites have static content, meaning the content rarely changes. But a blog is a website where the content changes on a regular basis, and the newest post, the newest content appears at the top of the page. So it appears in chronological order. And a blog is oftentimes people will post their thoughts or have, a particular subject they're writing about, and they'll post about that on a regular basis with the newest one appearing first. And as to whether it is social media, I think you'll find a lot of debate amongst the people that would like to debate that stuff and find it interesting. It is, I believe it's a form of social media, but it's definitely not, it's not typical social media, at least traditional blogs, because it's longer content, and traditionally the content on blogs is shared on social media, and Kevin may disagree with that, but I don't necessarily consider it to be a form of social media or the original form. I'm not sure how I would define
That's interesting. That's interesting. I mean, certainly we're going to conclude it today, but I think that's a neat point that if there's something on a blog and then it can get put on other forms of social media. So do these to be a blog, does it need to have running commentary? I mean, does it in that way become static or help me out with that?
Traditionally, blogs always had open comments and people commented on them, and a lot of blogs continue to do that. But and what that means is your readers read your blog post and then they comment on it, and there's a discussion that follows the blog post about the blog post. But there's been a trend in the last few years. Some people turn their comments off on their blogs, in part because the discussion's occurring in other social media sites, and also because there's been such a rampant amount of spam. People spamming the blog comments just to get their links to their websites there. And it becomes such a difficult job to maintain the comments and delete the spam, even with the spam filters, that some people don't have comments on their blogs, and they expect the ability to comment, and they expect the conversations to occur elsewhere in social media, whether it's Facebook or Twitter.
I think that's great. That's interesting too, because I think a lot of people, might blog, but they fear, having to deal with all the comments. And so the fact is, you don't need to have comments on there for it to be a blog. Kevin, any thoughts about blogs? And obviously, that's what you focus on quite a bit. So, want to chime in and talk a little bit about your focus on the blog world?
Yeah, I mean, I think people make the mistake and they call a blog as a thing when a blog is an art. So if I run, I run. If I blog, I blog. You don't look at a blog by what's on the face of it. It's not writing content, on a website and not, saying, gee, I have a blog on my website, so I'm updating it and putting up content. A blog is a conversation. It's not, I don't mean in the form of comments, and every blog should allow comments on the face of it or they're going to look foolish. Not that they're going to draw many, because you're not as a lawyer, because the only people that are more afraid of comments on a law blog than the public are the lawyers. So you just don't generate a lot. But what I mean by listening is you really don't care how many people come to your blog. What you're doing is you're strategically listening to thought leaders and influencers in your space, your target audience. If I'm a business lawyer, what are the corporations that I would like to meet and the in-house counsel that I would like to meet? Well, I'm following them in my newsreader. I'm following subjects, and I'm following sources that they might blog on or be reported on, and I'm referencing them and what they've said, and I'm offering my take. That's a conversation. So what's happened over time is that was blogging, and that was 10, 12 years ago. What's happened is lawyers really don't understand blogging, and a lot of people that work with lawyers and tell them that they understand blogging don't understand it either. It's a conversation. I listen to what's going on out there, and I engage. And by virtue of that, the people hear me, and I get the opportunity to meet them. So blogging is so much different than writing articles, and so much different than saying I'm updating my website with regular content. Whether it's social media or not, who cares? I mean, it was social media didn't exist when the term blogging existed. It was a coin that I think that was aptly put in place by the PR and communications industry to save themselves. So they needed to get out there and be social media experts. But blogs are certainly a hub for social media in that they move socially, just like a lot of media does. The New York Times moves socially. The content is shared across social media, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, you name it. Same with blogs.
Well, as long as we started naming that, let's talk about connecting through the various forms of or other forms of social media that are relevant for lawyers. Because my question is, we've heard about these things, but I want to know. So, does a lawyer need a LinkedIn profile and a Facebook page, and what's the difference? And for Facebook, does a lawyer need both a professional and a personal page? Nikki?
Well, first of all, the first thing you really need to decide is what are you trying to accomplish? Why are you using social media tools? Are you trying to showcase your expertise? Are you trying to connect with other people in the space or other people that share your interests? Are you trying to reach potential clients? You need to decide why you're using social media, and then you need to decide who the people, once you decide that, the people that you're trying to reach, where are they on social media? Which sites are they on? And that's how you decide which social media sites you really want to spend your time focusing on. But along those lines, every site reaches different people and sort of serves a different purpose. And oftentimes, I think, if nothing else, lawyers should have a LinkedIn presence, because LinkedIn is sort of an online resume. And so if you create a robust LinkedIn profile, it creates a spot for you to have an online resume separate from your law firm's website that people can easily learn information about you. So that's, it can be social, but LinkedIn is not particularly as social as other networks. But that's always a great place to start. But with the other ones, you really need to decide why you're using them, and then if the people that you're trying to reach are on them, and then decide how you want to go about using them.
And I think you told me that you have just one Facebook page, not two, but that you don't post pictures or things having to do with your kids or family members. Is that kind of how you handle the Facebook piece of it?
Yeah, I left out that part of your question. Right. Oftentimes, some lawyers feel like they need to have a personal and a professional Facebook page. So, because they share a lot about their families, and they don't want clients to see that, or they don't want to share it with their professional colleagues, and so they will have separate pages. And I think that really it doesn't make sense to do that. And in my particular case, and I'm quite sure Kevin's is the same, you have a lot of lawyers connecting with you that you've never met before, because we have pretty strong online presences and we both write and speak about this stuff a lot. So a lot of lawyers will connect with me. They're not people that I've ever met in person. And so I just don't like the idea of sharing information about my children to strangers. And I also feel like it should be their decision when they want to put information about themselves out there, not my decision. So I will refer to them as 10-year-old and 12-year-old. I don't use their names, and I really don't post pictures of them. And if I do, I use a separate Facebook group that only sends it to my family members, or a chosen group that I've created. So that's my way of dealing with it. But I do post a lot of personal information. I post what I cook for dinner. I post where I'm traveling. I post my thoughts. I post links to content I've created. I do share personal information, just not personal information that could be used to harm my family, quite frankly, or used against us in some way that I don't want to think about. So
sure, absolutely. Kevin, what's your take on how many of these kinds of things, and what you might suggest if you were really, in addition to a blog, kind of suggesting one of the things we've talked about?
Well, I agree with Nikki that you have to have a strategy. What's the end in mind? And I tend to tell lawyers to aim pretty darn high, unless you're really satisfied with your station in life. But if you're looking at lawyers that have achieved great things that are in the newspaper or on TV or in your state, and you're wondering why you didn't get to do that, networking online, as I would really describe this, can get you there. But you got to figure out what that's going to be, and I would start to focus on a niche as opposed to something broad. As far as the tools, if I were a lawyer, I'd set a goal of a year from now. I would like to have a working understanding of what this thing is called networking online, or networking through the internet, that some people may have lumped into social media. And when we think of tools, some of the first tools I would think about is, how do I listen? If you go to a networking event and a cocktail party, your goal isn't to bring a bullhorn and shout and figure out which bullhorn you're going to use. You listen. So when you listen online, you have to understand the concepts of RSS. You have to understand Feedly, F-E-E-D-L-Y, or Flipboard. If you have an iPad, start to make use of it. It can bring in, multiple six figures a year by understanding how to use it effectively for business development. Understand those things. As you get into other social media, try them to see what you like. Not every lawyer golfs, but some lawyers probably say they meet people for business development on a golf course. Some do it by volunteering at a soup kitchen. Some do it by being on a soccer board. Some do it by being on a bank board. All those things, those are all relationship baskets that can build a reputation. So go find what you like. Facebook, thing to realize, like on Facebook, I don't see what everybody shares. If they share their personal information and Facebook knows that I'm not overly interested in their personal information, I don't see it. So, don't assume that what you put out there everybody sees, because if we don't like it, Facebook knows that we don't like it. We didn't grow up in high school with you. We don't have an interest in the subject that you have an interest in. Your news feed when you open on Facebook, you probably don't scroll down more than 4 long, and it puts any number of variables as far as that. So on Facebook, I share both personal and business, those things I'm proud of. Those things in my business that I have ideas on because I want to learn from the audience, and I do learn a ton. I share my family. I share baseball. I share all that because people are more interested in me as a person than they are in probably what I do for a living. And I think that's the case, for lawyers. On LinkedIn, yeah, I mean, of course you have to have a profile on LinkedIn. If you don't, I mean, that's just like saying I really don't care about myself and my reputation. But the next thing you have to do is to take the things out of your RSS reader and share them on LinkedIn so that LinkedIn can understand what your interests are. Because then LinkedIn will go put your mug in front of other people and say, you should connect with this person. And all of a sudden you're going to start getting connections from people that are amazingly within your field that you would like to meet. So it's a matter of knowing what you want from the start, figuring out how to listen, and then picking up a working understanding of what the tools are, and then deciding which ones you enjoy using. It might take a year. It might take 2.
And you said that you want to share somebody else's article on LinkedIn or something. I mean, if you're on LinkedIn, do they just tell you how to do that? Is that how you find out how to use it? Because I have LinkedIn and I use it in a limited way, but I try to figure out how to post something, and I admitted to you I'm not very sophisticated in all this. I mean, or do you go somewhere else and just Google how to post on LinkedIn? I mean, how do you find out? To you guys, it's second nature. To a lot of us, it isn't. So when you say share it on LinkedIn, like, how do you do that?
Well, what you just said on that one thing, Google what you want to do, or go to YouTube and say, how do I do this?
Yeah.
It's all there. I mean, if I wanted to probably change the oil in my car and I don't, I could probably go to YouTube and it would tell me how to do it in granular detail and which tool I need. Everything you need to know, you can pretty much Google or go to YouTube and get it. But with LinkedIn, there's a status thing right below the top. It'll say status, and you can share content, and the content is just like sharing on Facebook. It's a status update. If you want to put longer form content, you can put that in there. But that's how you do it. But think about it. If you have an iPad because you figured out how to use it, and you have an application in there such as Feedly or Flipboard, it has all the sharing tools built into it. You don't even need to leave that atmosphere. You'll get something that says, where do you want to share this and what do you want to say? So all I need to do is hit the LinkedIn button and say, I want to share it and this is what I want to say. Boom, and it's gone. It's over to LinkedIn. I didn't have to do anything. So the thing to be thinking about, and I have a heavy bias this way, those laptop computers that you have, if you're trying to use a lot of social media on those, you're using old applications, things that aren't being worked on all the time. If I'm a kid graduating from college, I'm not wanting to work on desktop applications or laptop applications. I'm working on mobile. So, your iPhone, your iPad, your Android things, they all have applications that allow you to do that sharing instantaneously, not in an automatic type of way. It's still real, it's still genuine, it's still authentic, but it makes it so much easier and saves you time.
I want to move on and talk about Twitter for a minute, but first we had an audience question. It's just, and I wonder about this too. She asks, on LinkedIn, how do you vet requests to connect from individuals with whom you do not have an existing relationship? How do you guys handle these requests? Just generally tend to accept them, or talk to us about that.
I think you look at it like a rotary. I got this question a number of years ago, and then a lawyer stood up in Chicago and said, hey, I don't accept a request to connect from anybody I don't already know. And I said, really? So if you were at a rotary meeting, somebody came up and said, I looked up your background, I've been following you, I'd like to give you my business card, could I get yours? And you'd say, I'm sorry, I don't do that, because I really don't know who you are. It's dim-witted. So think of it from the standpoint that, okay, I'm going to look up the person's background. If they're a financial planner, they're probably going to try to sell me something, or a stockbroker. But if they're a lawyer, they're somebody serving the legal field, maybe they're learning from you, why not just accept it? Because what's happening is that you don't understand. This isn't a Rolodex. This is a machine learning device. It's learning what you like, who you like, what they like and who they like, what they share. it's getting better and better and better at serving up the information you'd like to see, and getting better and better and better at serving up your profile to other people. So I'm always looking up their background. Are they related to the law? And accept it. Now, I used to, until just about 2 weeks ago, every single person that requested to connect got a personal response from me. I looked up their profile, I dropped them a personal note back, even if they didn't drop me a personal note in, because I just thought it was the polite thing to do, and I met a boatload of people that way. But it's got up to the point where it might be 6 or 10 people a day. If I don't do it for 2 weeks, I got a football game's worth of going through these, and I can't do it. But I would err on the side of being inclusionary. I don't know what Nikki's practice is. She probably gets a ton too.
I do the same thing as you. I would have almost word for word. If it's like a financial planner or someone who's outside the legal profession, I can almost guarantee that they're just going to send me some kind of spammy sales pitch. But if it's someone who's involved in the legal profession or someone who's involved in cloud computing, because my other book is about cloud computing, or legal marketers even, that's involved in the legal profession, I will accept their connection. And very rarely, and the other thing I don't do sometimes is if they're a male attorney from a certain foreign countries, I don't accept their responses because inevitably they just end up sending me sort of strange, inappropriate, private messages. So there's a few other people that I won't connect with. That doesn't happen very often.
With that word, inappropriate, somebody asked the question on any social media or networking site, how do you manage content that others post that may be inappropriate and over which you have little or no control? Is there something quick you could each say about that?
If they do it regularly on Facebook, for example, you can either unfriend them or unfollow them. Because sometimes people will post political stuff that maybe not inappropriate, but it's just annoying to constantly see political stuff that's so the opposite of what you think, or it's so over the top. And so I will just sometimes unfollow them if that's all they seem to post.
Okay.
And so that doesn't appear in my feed. If they're posting like inappropriate photos of, I don't know, half-dressed people, and they do that all the time, then maybe you don't want to be connected with them anymore if that's all they're doing. So I think you need to play it by ear.
And somebody else asked, what about information that's, political or religious views on Facebook? People were wondering if posting that kind of content themselves could be harmful, if, say, a boss sees it or disagrees with the views. Do you refrain? You talked about your children, but do you also refrain from that kind of content or unfriend people who, posting that kind of content generally?
I don't unfriend them, but like I said, sometimes if it's just that's the only thing that they post, and I'll unfollow them. It just doesn't appear in my feed. But in terms of political stuff, you have to decide why you're on the platform and who's potentially going to be offended. And if you have potential clients across the political spectrum, then you probably don't want to be posting that unless it's truly just so much a part of who you are that you can't not do it, in which case you need to be willing to accept that a few potential clients aren't going to hire you because your political views are so opposed to theirs, or that type of thing. I don't know what you think about that, Kevin.
I think the biggest thing that people need to realize is the more if we're using something like Facebook or even LinkedIn, the more you use it, the better your information is. Okay? If you like people that half-dressed and put up what they are, you're going to see more of it. If you don't, you'll never see it. You just don't see it. I see more junk on TV than I see on Facebook. Facebook gives me my finest form of news before I get it in any other way, but that's because I've worked at the friends that I have. I'm proactive. So what I'm doing is I'm looking at who are the people that come up that have 20 or plus mutual friends with me, and what do they do? Wow, they're a reporter for CNN, and shockingly, they accept my request for friendship. It's not because we're going to chum it up over beer. It's because they're going to be the type of people, now that I looked at what they share, that are going to bring good news into my world. It brings more valuable information to me. Everybody thinks of social media as me, 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 me. How do I get my stuff out in front of them? How do they get to know me? How am I going to get work? It's not that type of thing. Social media is social. It's where you get out and you engage. And in some cases, like Facebook, It's a tremendous way to learn from people that you trust. So if I trust John Scully, the former CEO of Pepsi and Apple, and I'm his friend on Facebook, and he puts up good information from a conference he was at, I would never have got that information before. But I had to work at developing that feed. If I'm a practicing lawyer and I'm doing estate planning in Des Moines, I'm going to be looking to develop a network on Facebook, if I'm using it, of great estate planning and financial planning people around the country. And I'm going to be looking to develop a network of the financial planners in Des Moines, the Chamber of Commerce Executive Director, and when I'm looking at them in Facebook, to befriend them as opposed to being on the defense of who do I keep away from me. I want to look at, do they use it? If they just change their profile one time, that doesn't add any value to my life. But do they share information on Des Moines in the business community that I might not otherwise have seen on a regular basis? Maybe they share information about where they went on family vacation that I would enjoy knowing when I get to see them. Then as I like what they're sharing, Facebook's going to know that in this world, the type of things they share and the type of people that they are, I need to bring O'Keefe more stuff like that, because if I do, then O'Keefe will keep using Facebook. So Facebook can be a wonderful tool if you work at using it. We're getting a little bit sidetracked on that one tool, but
okay.
that's kind of my take.
Actually, thanks, because I want to move on to Twitter, but also a couple of the people have been asking us to repeat. You mentioned Feedly and Flipboard. People have been asking what were the apps that you had mentioned, and those were the two. And so now let's talk about Twitter, because I think Kevin had told me that you can't imagine people not using it, and frankly for me it's hard for me to imagine using it. So now I'm going to have to start, because he says it's like not using a cell phone. So Twitter, here's what I sort of understand. Mechanically, it's these short, up to 140-character messages using the hashtag or pound symbol right before relevant keyword or phrase to categorize the tweet and maybe to help it show more easily in a Twitter search. But even though I think Twitter's been around since about the same time, Facebook was really rolled out to the public, maybe around 2006, I'm really not clear, other than celebrities like Ashton Kutcher announcing things. What is tweeting for in a professional context, I guess I'd ask. And Kevin, you had some interesting percentages of what it might be for versus Facebook, for example.
Yeah, it's different, no question. But I remember Kirk Jenkins told an audience in San Francisco, he's an excellent appellate lawyer in both San Francisco and Northern District of Illinois, but he couldn't imagine lawyers not using it because it's his best source of information for staying up to speed with appellate issues from those people they trust, because all of a sudden you're getting information from the courts, you're getting information from lawyers, and he creates a Twitter list. So you should make a note and just say, how do I create a Twitter list, and go find out how to do this? Because if you don't have a list, it's like trying to listen to all the radio stations in Chicago at once. I mean, it's like you go, wow, it's a lot of noise, I can't understand it, that's why I don't use it. Well, of course not. But if you have a list and you say, okay, here's a list of those people that are interested in financial planning issues in Des Moines, and I've created it, now I can see them. I'm getting information from them. Maybe I retweet what they have to say. Maybe I favorite what they have to say. You know what it's like getting a favorite or a retweet? You're feeling the love. If you're a lawyer and you're giving love to referral sources or other bloggers or the media, they're going to start to love you back. They'll follow you, and they'll also start to want to build a relationship with you. So, just very quickly, what I do with Twitter is I have Feedly set up that comes into another application on my iPad. I go through my feeds in the morning, I go through them at night, and I share on Twitter interesting things on my niche. Networking online, business development online, blogs, social media, LinkedIn, Twitter, certain subjects that I follow. And maybe there's 25 things a day that I share. People really seem to appreciate that. They reshare it. It's not my stuff. It's other people's stuff that I've read. They like it. So I meet a lot of people that begin to follow me. It's that wake behind the scenes. In that wake behind the boat, look at all those people I get a chance to meet because I can see that they're following me. And then, now that I've built up social media equity through Twitter, I share much more than I would ever put my own stuff in. By the time I go to share my own blog post in Twitter, 3 other people have already shared it. because they like the fact that I share other people's stuff, I'll share yours. And so when I do share mine, they get heavily shared. So Twitter's worked well for me that way. And I can create a list on just about any subject. So I sat down one night and said, I want a list of all the reporters in the United States that cover the courts. It took me about 2 hours. I did Google searches. I found lists that other people had, and I was able to do that. You can do them on sports. If you like to follow sports, create one for your team. They're a blast to follow during the game. So that's how I use Twitter.
Okay, great. I think, Nicole, tell us what you want to add.
Well, I want to say, first of all, the reason I'm on Twitter, and it's been an incredible tool for me, is because of Kevin. Years ago, and I've written about this a couple of times too. I don't know if you've ever come across it, Kevin, but years ago you had given Twitter a try, and then you didn't see much to it. And then you wrote a blog post and said, I'm giving Twitter another try. On Real Lawyers Have Blogs, and I think you should too. You were just talking to your audience in general, and I said, I'll give it another try too, because I looked at it and hadn't seen much to it. And I joined it, right after you I started using it again. And from that point on, it's just been an incredible platform for me. I found it to be a great way to meet people I otherwise would have never met, to reach people, to share my ideas, to get feedback on my ideas, to and like Kevin said, learn from the followers. And I've met so many different people that I otherwise never would have met. And for me, Twitter's been a great platform. And the way that I use Twitter and the other platforms is I use a couple. I've been using Feedly for years. I recommend that in our social media book, the Carolyn Elephant, and I wrote in 2010. I've been using Feedly since 2009. I think it's the RSS feed reader, my feed reader of choice. I also use Prismatic, Prismatic. That connects with all of your different social media accounts, and it serves you up stories that people that you follow and are connected with are also sharing. So that's another way to get information filtered to you, is through Prismatic. And then I use TweetDeck for Twitter. TweetDeck is just a third-party, well, actually it's now owned by Twitter, but it's an application that allows you to pull your Twitter feed and those lists that Kevin was talking about. You can actually create columns that show what's happening in each of those lists, so you can read different content coming through on Twitter that you've created lists for. And then I use Buffer, Buffer, to Buffer connects with Feedly. So when I'm reading through Feedly and I see a post that is interesting, that's relevant to the stuff that I focus on, that I think my followers might be interested in, I click on the Buffer icon within Feedly, and it pulls up a box. And what that box has in it is the title of the blog article, a shortened link to the blog article, and the name of the blog that it came from. And so then I can share that, and then it has little links. You can click and decide which platforms you want to share it on. So I have Twitter, there's LinkedIn, there's Facebook, and you can click like even LinkedIn groups you can share to. So you can decide which platforms you want to share that information on, and then you click send, and it sends that shortened, and you can also add, if you want, interesting posts because it talks about this topic, and then you send it across to the different platforms. And it's a great way to sort of help filter and share your content across different platforms in a really efficient way. So those are the primary tools I use for Twitter and the other social media platforms that really help me sort through the information and then efficiently share it on the platforms I think where it would fit the best.
All
and
right,
then in terms go ahead.
Hold that thought, because I want to get away from sort of all the other things people can do to get to social media, but quickly I wanted to sort of read off what you guys had told me, because I want people to remember about deciding what their goals are as they hear about all these different things and what's best to use. So you guys talked to me about, do you want to use social media to show your expertise, to demonstrate you can write, to show that you know and can analyze the law? And if so, you might think about starting a blog, and a following may come. If it's your goal, to connect, and I know Kevin has talked about how, he also connects with people through the blog, so that's not, mutually exclusive. But also, you're talking about, is it your goal to connect, and you want to read, as you've talked about, what everyone else that you're interested in has, or that you follow has said, and share it, and tweet a comment, or send a request to connect. All these things can be done sort of with the purpose of accomplishing your goal. And Kevin, you had, I think, one interesting point that you made about, you can differentiate some of these things, but, figure out what you enjoy, what clients you enjoy working with if you're looking toward developing business. And I think people forget about that in sort of the rush to figure out, oh my gosh, how do I use all this social media? What's it for? You still, sort of really encourage people to remember to enjoy it. Isn't that? Can you say just a couple quick words about that? Then we're going to move on.
Yeah, I mean, if people are asking me to help them, I do tell them to begin with the end in mind, and then I tell them to get out the magic wand and to write down on the piece of paper what type of work would they really like to do, what they've enjoyed, and then what type of clients they would like to do it for, and get very clear on that issue, because that's doable today. It was doable before, but it might take 10 or 15 years. And the reason that it's doable is that these tools are not anything new. We've always got our best work from relationships and word of mouth, period. Now, there's a whole different world where you get your work from advertisements. But those clients that you're sitting next to at the trial table that you got from advertisements are son of a guns. They're tough people to work with. The people that come via relationships, word of mouth, they've studied your background, that got your name from somewhere else and now looked you up, they're great people. So figure that out from the start, and then always focus on any one of these tools as how am I building relationships, how am I enhancing my reputation? And go slow, but it's going to go very fast as far as the impact it's going to have.
Right, and you also talked about, people should remember they can use all this to develop professionally as well as grow relationships with non-lawyers. And Nikki talks about trying to get a job through LinkedIn and other forms. They're showcasing, one's body of work to market your practice. These are all good goals. So let's change up the pace a bit. Let's go to your quick tips because I want to cover a little more ground with some thoughts from you. I think we have a couple of quick tips from Nikki and then a couple of quick tips from Kevin. So, Nikki, could you start us off?
Let's see.
You talked about, law students and,
okay.
Looking for jobs, lawyers looking for jobs.
Well, I think that social media and blogging in particular can be really useful for people that are trying to find jobs. One really interesting case study that I read about years ago, and I'm not quite sure whatever happened to this lawyer, but he was a young lawyer who just graduated from law school and was trying to get a job, and what he did was every day he happened to live in Washington, D.C., or near that. He would go to the Supreme Court and listen to the Supreme Court arguments and blog about them. And I thought that was a fantastic way, and the ABA Journal wrote about him because his blog it was read by people. It was something nobody else was doing. Nobody else was writing about Supreme Court arguments and just the experience of being there. And it was a great way for him to be noticed. And so if you want to get a job in a particular field, what I recommend that you do is start a blog where you write about cases that come down in that field, about articles about happenings in that area. And then you read and you subscribe to other lawyers across the country that are in that particular area that are blogging about it. And you subscribe to their blogs and you read their blogs, and that'll give you some ideas about what to write about. And then you write about one of their blog posts and give your own thoughts on it, and you let them know whether by sharing on social media and CCing their Twitter name in so that they see that you wrote about it, or sending them a quick email and introducing yourself and saying, I just wanted to know I really enjoyed your blog post. It was a great, you raised a great point, and I wrote another blog post. Here's a link to it where I kind of use that as a jumping point, and I really enjoyed your thoughts. And even if this lawyer is not going to hire you, this lawyer is connected with other people in that field. And when they hear that someone's looking for a new associate, you're going to be someone that comes to mind. So it's a great way, both blogging and then sharing stuff on social media and interacting with people on social media that are in that field, to use it as a way to sort of get connected in the field and get your name out there.
And we have an article from you that people can look at on that it's archived on the website. We'll mention in a bit tips for standing out in a competitive market, and really that's talking too about getting a job, because that's really top of mind for lots of people. So we encourage that. Now, I think your next tip is about using social media actually in the practice of law. Could you speak about that for just a quick minute?
Well, you can use social media in the practice of law. The way that it's a great tool because what it allows you to do is, especially blogging, it forces you to stay current on changes in your area of law. So it forces you to read the cases that are coming down and to stay abreast of decisions in other jurisdictions. And it helps you stay abreast of it. And then when you write about these things, it allows you to sort of finesse the ideas and makes you think about it. And also, whenever you write about something, you remember it better because you've written about it. So it's great for that. And then another reason that it's so useful in the practice of law, aside from blogging, is when you connect with other people across the country that are practice in the same areas of law that you do, and also other local lawyers. Those become referral sources because you are connecting with these people, you're sharing with them, you're creating a relationship with them, and you're going to be a person that they think of when they want to refer a case to you, refer a case or something along those lines. So it's a great way to both stay abreast of practice areas and also cultivate relationships.
Right, and you said something to me that just really stuck with me because you said, some people would even say it's almost malpractice. For example, let's say, how much information you can get on social media if you're trying to vet jurors, for example. So, I think people worry that, am I giving legal advice if I'm not on social media? But you all are saying it's legal knowledge and information. It's not legal advice. So we'll get to some other concerns in a second that people have. But Kevin, you had a quick tip about getting outside your circle of visibility and how that's helpful through social media. Can you say a couple words on that?
Yeah, I mean, in addition to visibility, I think it's getting outside your comfort zone. There's a lot of people that are listening that just feel this is uncomfortable. It feels daunting. Feels like somebody's saying, hey, here, take a bite of this, and now we want to shove the food down your throat before you even get a chance to digest. It's just too much stuff. But at some point in time, this is not trivial. This is real. You have to use these things, just like you have to use a cell phone to function in life, or have a telephone on your desk to connect with the world. And as far as getting seen, I'm not big on the word visibility. I'm big on relationships and word of mouth. But think of the reach you can have and where you can go outside your circle. I mean, I'll just share for me. I mean, I'm a snot-nosed kid from a small town in the Midwest. I practiced law in rural Wisconsin for 17 years. And because of blogging and because of what I've done, I can reach out and have lunch with CEOs and executives of Wolters Kluwer, ALM, LexisNexis, board members at Thomson Reuters. It blows my mind to email a managing partner at a top 5 law firm and say, I'm in New York, do you have time to get together? And they want to. I know that everybody doesn't have a lot of time, but another thing you got in here, in addition to the professional development where you learn, because think about it, when I joined my State Trial Lawyers Association to become a board member, I drive 250 miles and camp out there for 2 days for the conference. Now I'm using social networking to meet a lot of those people and learn from them instantaneously by following them, as opposed to getting outlines in binders, etc. So I'm learning all of that way in a constant way that is going on. But you have to get out and do business development, or you're not going to have any fun practicing law, because you're not going to get the type of work you want and the quality of clients you want. And it's a 5 to 10 hour a week type of deal. Period.
Right. And even if you're in a job, Kevin, where you need to develop business, all this helps boost people's reputations, and they can get more speaking engagements and opportunities to publish. And, I thought, you talked about how it saves you time, and that's really interesting. Your next tip is also fascinating about how it can save you money. Talk about that for a minute for us, will you?
Well, I mean, even let's assume that you don't have to grow a business. You're working in the government. You're working as a public defender, state's attorney, U.S. Attorney's Office. Maybe you don't like traveling away from your family because you got 2 young kids, but now you're learning from people in spades, from coast to coast. Your connection with clerks, your connection with the other U.S. attorneys across the country, because you're connecting with them in ways you never would have before. This isn't just trivial and goofy. How many doctors at Mayo Clinic do you think use Twitter? 4,000. Why? Because they have to connect with the outside world. They have to keep learning, and they have to be able to share the medical practices that they are into with doctors around the world. They would not be as good without it. So they don't have to go out and get work for Mayo to survive, but they're actively using social media, and they don't have to travel around the world from Rochester, Minnesota to Oslo to stay up to speed with a particular medical procedure. So this can save time and money. It's for business development, it was $60,000 for me to run a one-page ad in the Yellow Pages. And then they came out with 2 books. Now it's 120, and then it was rural areas. Next thing I know, I'm spending $350,000 in Yellow Pages. I couldn't spend $350,000 on the Internet in the next 15 years. But I'm going to have to learn how to use it. I might have to pay to do that. But once I know how to fish, I can begin to fish for myself through the Internet.
All right, let's keep the quick pace going, get into these agree-disagree moments. Kind of a bridge, although, Nikki, I want to throw this out to you first, because we're talking about, if you can save time and maybe not go to every conference you used to want to go to, read, post, blog, tweet, etc. Do you agree or disagree that using social media can actually make you less social?
I disagree with that, because although it changes the way that you're social, I don't think it makes you less social. And I think what has happened is, first of all, connects you with more people than you would have otherwise been connected with. And one interesting phenomenon that happens, and I'm sure Kevin would agree with this, is once you connect with people online, you get to know them, you have a sense of who they are, and then when you do attend these conferences, especially the national conferences, it breaks the ice so much quicker. You recognize people from social media, you stop and talk to them, and everybody feels like they're friends rather than just a bunch of people standing in a room twiddling their thumbs. It really is a great icebreaker, and it's a great way to connect with like-minded people across the country and across the world. And
I thought it was fascinating. You also told me about using social media in advance as to who will be at a conference and make plans, so you don't have to find yourself sitting alone in your room. I just thought that was an eye-opener for me. Really, really made a lot of sense. And I think, Kevin, you talked about also, it's called social media, social networking. It makes you even more social. I mean, it's a real equalizer for introverts and, people in all walks and areas. But let me ask you this, Kevin. How about the employers that are listening online? I think, they worry. They worry about liability if people are doing all these things on their computers at work. So what about this? Agree, disagree. Employers would be wise to encourage the use of social media on the job. What do you say to that?
Only if they want talented and informed employees that can contribute to the bottom line in the company. Now, if they're looking for dim-witted people and people that aren't going to want to work at other places because they're trying to clamp down on the use of cell phones or telephones in the workplace or computers, I mean, that's about, you got to realize how silly it sounds. We want to clamp down on these things. If I can build relationships with people that expand my horizons as a person, wow. I can only imagine having, I'm encouraging our employees, as far as I'm concerned, need to be more social. And they need to connect in areas that they're passionate about. If it's fly fishing, great, because they're ultimately going to find out that they can use it in other ways too. So it's a tremendous learning tool and a connection tool. It's a way for people to learn how to communicate, a way to learn how to write, to feel emotions. I mean, you think about, you cry and you laugh, seriously, on social media. You do. When people share stories of spouses dying, or somebody I worked with at a major law firm just died of a brain tumor, and I'm talking with my wife about it, and you want to cry. Or I'm reading about another lawyer whose wife, has got rectal cancer. Another. I mean, it's this stuff is real and it's genuine, and I think it brings out emotions as people. And I think if you bring out your emotions as people, you're more frank, you're more real, you're more authentic. Now, that's not at the law and the business level. I'll acknowledge that, business development level. But it's at the level where we build relationships with people. And as you build relationships with people, they come to know you as a person, and they trust you as real and genuine. We're only here for 30 or 40 years in our business life. Why not get to know people that have similar interests? Because people like to work with people that they like. They refer work to you. They'll be a reference for you. You get to learn from them. They learn from you. It's pretty special what we've got going on here. This is not over here on the side that
right.
You should skip.
And if anybody trusts and respects information from McKinsey, Kevin told me that McKinsey did a study. I mean, I think everybody trusts and respects that information. That they actually found that law is a profession that would benefit from greater use of social media. So we wanted to kind of underscore that. And but Nikki had told me too. Nicole said, if you're worried about employees being distracted, there are these simple ways people can turn off their notifications. There are ways, employers' concerns can be met without, trying to worry that they have to have disclaimers and rules and clamp down. That's just counterproductive. I think we everybody has, emphasized that to me. I want to, before we go to these ultimate takeaways, there's a theme through some of the questions we're getting. It's about fears. Could you really put up your LinkedIn profiles to the public because some people are using them for the wrong reasons? Or, are we worried about what kind of quality clients we might get if we use, social media? Or what if we're looking for a job and, the boss may find out? I think a lot of these questions really are grounded in those kind of concerns, but also somebody said, look, it sounds like you could spend 8 hours a day on social media alone, so how can I keep this in bounds? I mean, it's delicate enough to find work-life balance. Is this going to overtake me? So why don't you each quickly talk about those kind of questions?
Well, I think at the end of the day, the answer to all of them is you need to use common sense. You need to understand the different platforms and how they work, both to interact on social media for business development purposes and also to understand how to use it to support your cases. So in litigation, for mining social media for evidence, or researching jurors, you need to understand the platforms and how you can use them to forward your goals, whatever they might be. And once you understand the platforms, then you have a better sense of whether you can use social media to search for a job without letting your boss know, because you understand how the platforms work and what types of notifications, if any, your boss would see. And when it comes to sharing information on LinkedIn, your resume is your resume. You decide what you put up there and what you are comfortable with being shared. You don't put your Social Security number on LinkedIn. You put your name, you don't put your date of birth, but you put the stuff that you're comfortable sharing. So you need to use common sense when it comes to that type of thing. And then likewise, you need to use common sense when it comes to interacting on social media and the amount of time you spend doing so. You need to use the right tools. Again, that's the education part. Find the tools that are going to help you streamline your interactions and get them done more quickly rather than spending 8 hours a day. And you also need to decide, how much time am I willing to do this each day? How much time am I willing to do it that it's going to pay off? And then, try to limit yourself accordingly so that you don't get lost in the sea of social media.
Yeah. Kevin, quick thoughts on these concerns, fears?
Yeah, I think the fear thing, just write it down, FEAR, false expectations that appear real, because that's what they are. People are not getting in trouble by doing these things. So the fact that you're ignorant as to how they work is leaving you with fears because you don't understand it. If I don't understand something, I'm afraid. I think that's a big issue. As far as the type of clients you get from social media, they're better. They're better. Talk to people that get their clients from the Yellow Pages and ask them how good their clients are. Ask people about, when you get clients from spending money in SEO, how good their clients are. But I talked to a bankruptcy lawyer in Southern California recently. She by June she was already past the number that she had got the previous year from good work, and that's consumer and small business bankruptcy. You look at larger firm lawyers. You look at Dave Donahue in Chicago. He's generating an incremental 7 figures more a year by virtue of blogging on just a niche in Chicago IP litigation work. Or lawyers that have made world reputations, whether it's on fashion law, equine law. Bill Marler's made the foods industry safer. Your food is safer because of what Bill Marler has done blogging. Going on a cruise is safer because of what Jim Walker's done at Cruise Law News. Not only are these people affecting change in society, they're realizing financial gains themselves so that they can put their kids through college, they can have a good standard of living, and they can enjoy what they want to do. The quality of work you receive when it's based on relationships and word of mouth is going to be better than any other work that you get. You get a referral from a lawyer, it's better. So I would put aside the fears and say, well, if I don't understand it, what am I going to do? If it's worth going out and learning how to fish, I'm probably going to have to go fish. If you don't want to do it, that's fine too. But you're going to have to try it.
if people have state ethics rules, someone just wrote in limitations, people should definitely read their ethics rules and see what kind of, mentions if they start to make any, or there are opinions on any kind of social media issues. I mean, but Kevin told me a cute story. This idea of being afraid to put things up, on the social media. Some lawyer had told a judge he needed a continuance because he was going to be, tied up with something, and then he put on Facebook that he was skiing, so he got sanctioned actually. But other than that, as he said, people just aren't getting in trouble for these kind of things, and who knows, maybe that'll come. But they want you to use your best judgment. They want you to, moving into the takeaways, venture in. We're talking about time. Nicole, you have a takeaway that you suggest, people spend some time every day on social media. So how much time roughly? I mean, I know it varies, but you spend 2.5 hours, and Kevin.
But it's also part of my job. So.
That's part of your job, so that's not going to happen to people. So
right.
Tell us, what do you say about that real quickly in terms of a takeaway? Yeah,
I think that it makes a lot of sense. It's easy to every morning most people read the newspaper. When I used to work in my the first law firm after I left the public defenders, I'd come in and people would they'd get there and they'd read the newspaper in the mornings. Partners would have their feet up on their desks and they'd read the newspapers for half an hour. So instead of reading newspapers, people are now getting their information online. So that time when you're getting your information online, when you're reading through news sites online, when you're reading through your RSS feed, you can spend 20 minutes to half an hour in the morning reading through all of this, staying abreast of changes in your practice areas, and sharing information that you think would be interesting to other people. And it's that same amount of time, you're just repurposing it a little bit. So you spend 20 minutes to half an hour every weekday on social media, and that oftentimes can be enough to get you started and help you understand it. And just really quickly, with the ethics stuff, I regularly write about all the ethics decisions that come down in different jurisdictions, and you're right. All you need to do is really research it when it comes to ethics and social media and understanding what your obligations are. But certainly I don't mean to overlook the ethics, but that wasn't
right.
the focus.
Right, exactly. All right, Kevin, you have a takeaway that you suggest people just sort of test out the social media and talk, say 90 days and kind of see what happens, right?
Yeah, I think I think the goal of 90 days isn't to see that, wow, I'm getting all this work. The goal is just to see, I could see how this could work if I used it. And then a time thing. And I'll give you an example. I was practicing law in La Crosse, Wisconsin. I didn't know what the heck the internet was until I bumped into AOL. So for a half hour in the morning, I couldn't type very fast. So my secretary came in and she could type faster than I can talk, and we answered 4 or 5 questions, and we enjoyed it. And people passed the answers around in AOL, and word got around in my state and nationally. Hired an intern from the university, and she put the Q&As on a website. And it was real and sincere, the information that we were sharing. I look at that and I go, my God, a lawyer could still do that today and build a reputation on their niche. Questions may not come from AOL. They may come from their office. They may come from AVO or Justia. But, do what you enjoy. It doesn't have to take a lot of time. And if you do anything, on all the people on this call, let's say there's 500 people on this call, how many are actually going to act? 2, probably, max. So 498 sat on their can and did nothing, and 2 do something. Think of how you shine like a star and connect with people. That's the opportunity that you have.
Right, because your other tip is, there's only one thing to be afraid of with social media, and that is?
What's that?
That's doing nothing, according to you.
That's about right. I think I would be afraid of it, but you don't have to do it. I mean, people can have great practices. I can think of lawyers that I work with that have phenomenal practices, and they're probably more apt to get. They might use it ultimately for staying in touch with their family. I work with a lawyer back in Indiana that's 70 years old. He uses it now for staying in touch with his kids and his grandkids, but he understands now how it could be used.
Okay, and Nicole's last tip is also priceless and true.
Well, it's don't drink and tweet. Don't use social media while you're out drinking, and because the internet is forever. And really, just think about things. Just give it a real quick think, even if you're not drinking, or before you send something, because the internet is forever. So just make sure that what you're putting out there, you want to put out there.
Yeah, and also, beyond the substance, you say don't drive and tweet. And, really, that's just to remind everybody there's a place and a time, and don't let this overtake you. Don't be afraid it will. You can control much more than you think you can, and I think our experts have shown you today, some really good ways to use it, some research to follow up and do afterward, and don't be those. We have more than 500 people on the call, but don't be those ones that don't act. So I actually, have a couple last slides, but before that, I want to, obviously, on behalf of everyone, thank Nicole and Kevin. What great experts they are. And I'd like all of you on the call to take a look at our page that has their articles and items and also archives of past programs, ambar.org/advice, ambar.org/advice. And that will tell you that our next program, November 14th, because we're always second Fridays, choosing and pursuing alternative careers, and you can go ahead and start signing up for that now. Visit the ABA job boards also if you are looking for a job or looking to hire. And we would ask you to stay on the line just to get a quick electronic survey to give us your thoughts about other programs you'd like to see and how you enjoyed this one, and what we could do differently or additionally. So thank you all on behalf of the ABA and myself. We look forward to having you with us again, and Nicole and Kevin, again, a special thank you.